Step into the covert world of espionage, where every glance may be a lie, and every touch could be the beginning of betrayal. These gripping stories expose the ruthless chessboard of intelligence operations, where honeypot seductions, silent assassinations, and covert missions unfold in the shadows. In a realm where governments weaponize secrets and human weakness is the ultimate vulnerability, operatives are seduced, manipulated, and turned into pawns for the enemy. Each tale explores the personal cost of deception, the fragility of loyalty, and the blurred lines between love, power, and survival. Welcome to the world where trust is a liability, and betrayal is just another move in the game. Thank you for listening to Seduce and Extract. The Asset Part 2. Marina Cafe Laituri, Kotka, Finland. Meyer stepped into the Marina Cafe Laituri, the familiar chime of the doorbell muffled by the hum of conversation and the hiss of the espresso machine. The warm scent of ground coffee beans and fresh pastries wrapped around him, a welcome contrast to the sharp bite of the winter air outside. It was a ritual for him. Mid-afternoon espresso, a brief moment to reset between the endless churn of classified reports and operational briefings. He joined the short queue, scanning the menu out of habit, though he always ordered the same thing. Then, out of the corner of his left eye, movement caught his attention. A tall, broad-shouldered man with graying hair pushed open the cafe door. His build was unmistakable solid, like someone who had carried weight for a living, whether in gear or secrets. His coat was nondescript, the kind you could buy in any outdoor supply store in Helsinki, but it was worn with the casual ease of a man who didn't want to be remembered. The man's gaze swept the room once before settling briefly on Meyer. Their eyes met for less than a second. A small nod, barely perceptible, was all it took. The message was clear. Follow. Meyer didn't react outwardly. He stepped to the counter, ordered his espresso in Finnish, paid in cash, and waited just long enough to avoid suspicion. Cup in hand, he drifted casually toward the back of the cafe. The gray-haired man was already moving, walking with the slow, confident stride of someone who expected to be followed, but never chased. They passed a narrow hallway lined with stacked supply crates and a bulletin board covered in faded event flyers. At the end of the hall, a single door led outside. The man pushed it open, holding it just long enough for Meyer to slip through behind him. The air in the alley was colder, sharper, and smelled faintly of diesel. Parked along the building's brick wall was a black suburban engine running, exhaust curling up in thin white plumes. The vehicle looked too clean for the slush-covered street, its tinted windows swallowing the pale daylight. The man stopped beside the rear passenger door, his gloved hand resting on the handle. He pulled it open and gave Meyer a look that was equal parts command and courtesy. Without a word, Meyer stepped forward and slid into the back seat. The leather interior was warm, the hum of the heater muffling the outside noise. The door closed with a heavy, deliberate thunk. A second later, the gray-haired man was in the front passenger seat. From the driver's side, a voice calm, measured and unfamiliar spoke without turning around.
Good afternoon, Director Meyer. We need to talk.
All the windows were tinted deep black. No one outside could see them. No one inside could see out. Good afternoon, sir, Meyer said evenly, settling into the seat. His posture was calm, but his eyes tracked every detail. The driver's hands on the wheel, the slight vibration of the idling engine, the faint smell of leather mixed with coffee. The man in the driver's seat didn't turn around. His voice was steady, precise. Yuri Ivanovich Nosenko, codename Robert William Walton, is a well-known FSB operative. We've been looking for him for the last 10 years. Meyer leaned back slightly. Go ahead. Yuri is a senior officer with Directorate C, the man continued. Highly intelligent. Graduate of Plekhanov Russian University of Economics, Russia's most elite institution for economic strategy. He's an expert in operational finance, logistics, and covert asset funding. He's also a trained marksman sniper qualified. Hand-to-hand combat, specialized killhouse training, urban infiltration, and deep cover counterintelligence. Before joining the FSB clandestine service, he served with Spetsnaz GRU, Tier 1 operational unit. Meyer let out a low whistle. Geez. From the front passenger seat, the gray-haired man who had brought him here glanced back briefly. We know, he said flatly. That's why we're thanking you for helping us pinpoint him. He's one of our high-value targets. Meyer shook his head. Don't thank me, thank Maria. The driver's voice sharpened slightly. Speaking of Maria, we know she's been in a relationship with him for 3 years. That's what she told me, Meyer said, keeping his tone neutral. The driver asked the question like he was testing the edges of Meyer's conviction. You don't think she's actually been turned? That she's just playing us? No, Mayer said firmly. She's furious about being used, and about her mother being targeted. That's personal. She'll do whatever she needs to help. She's not just a good officer, she's motivated now. Good, the man in the driver's seat replied, the words slow and deliberate. Because when this operation goes down, we'll need her. Not as background support, not as a messenger, as the point of contact. Mayer didn't flinch. Then you'd better be ready for the storm she'll bring with her. The driver finally glanced at him in the rearview mirror, the faintest trace of a knowing smile on his lips. That's exactly what we're counting on. The driver reached into the center console and pulled out a slim, black dossier. He handed it back over the seat without turning. Mayer took it, feeling the weight not of paper, but of finality. Here's the operational plan, the driver began, his tone all business. Step 1. Maria makes contact with Yuri. She tells him she has the intelligence he's demanding: transmission logs, sensitive compartmented information facility traffic, Baltic intercept data. No delays, no hesitation, she has it all. Mayer flipped the folder open, scanning the printed timeline and support diagrams. Step 2. The driver continued. She arranges a meet for the handoff. We have chosen the southwestern side of Sapakanlati Lake. A sniper will be set up on the roof of the Arto Tulsa arena. It is public enough for our surveillance to work, but private enough for him to think he's safe. That's when the risk spikes. Once Yuri has the intelligence, the probability is high, very high, that he will try to kill her on the spot. He won't want a loose end. Mayer didn't look up. I assumed that as well. I'll warn her. Correct, the man said, his voice dropping a notch. Make sure she knows he will try to kill her. There was a beat of silence in the Suburban before the driver went on. However, our team will be in place. Finnish Jaeger Special Operations will be embedded in the Perimeter 1 sniper in Overwatch, with a direct line to my command post. If Yuri makes a move on her, he won't have time to pull the trigger twice. Mayer nodded once, closing the dossier. Good. That means she has a chance. Correct, the driver affirmed. And at the same time this operation is going down, an FBI-CIA joint detail will be operating stateside. They'll grab Maria's mother and relocate her to a secure facility. She's been under discreet surveillance for the past week. We've already established a zero-contact bubble around her location. A small exhale escaped Mayer. Excellent, that'll take pressure off Maria. The gray-haired man in the passenger seat turned slightly. It'll also take away Yuri's leverage. Once he loses his bargaining chip, all he'll have left is desperation. Mayer's eyes hardened, and desperate men make mistakes. The driver's hands tightened slightly on the wheel. Exactly, and when he does, we'll be ready. Sapokanatilik. Maria hadn't heard from Yuri in 3 weeks. Each day that passed was like standing on the edge of a cliff, waiting for the wind to shove her over. The burner phone he had given her sat on her nightstand every night, its presence a constant, cold reminder. The battery indicator had dropped to a single red bar that morning. She'd been checking it obsessively, terrified she might miss his call, the call that would set everything in motion. 2 days ago, she had finally broken the silence. Using the terse, clinical phrasing they had agreed on, she sent him the message. Package ready. It was the trigger phrase that told him she had the intelligence he demanded. Late on Friday night, Maria returned to her hotel room with every muscle in her body aching. Since arriving in Kotka, she had worked every single day-long hours in secure facilities, reviewing endless pages of system logs, holding her cover together like glass in a windstorm. She needed sleep more than anything. She slipped her keycard into the door, stepped inside, and let the soft click of the lock fall into the silence. The room was dim, lit only by the pale glow of the city bleeding in through the curtains. She set her keys and ID badge on the desk, shrugging off the weight of her messenger bag. She had just started unbuttoning her coat when she felt it. A vibration. Her entire body froze. The burner phone was still in her coat pocket. Fear surged instantly through her, sharp and cold Mayer's words replaying in her mind. Once Yuri has the intelligence, he'll probably kill you on the spot. Her hands shook as she reached into her pocket. The small black phone felt heavier than it should. She flipped it open, the weak glow of the screen cutting through the shadows. One message. Location change. Pick up at Raja Market off 170, 10 a.m. Maria's pulse spiked. This wasn't the location the operation had been built around. Every detail, the Overwatch positions, the sniper's field of fire, the extraction routes, was tied to the original meeting spot. Changing the venue at the last minute risked everything. She grabbed her work cell and scrolled to the secure number Mayer had given her. She hit dial. It rang twice. Go ahead, came the calm male voice on the other end. With her voice trembling despite her effort to steady it, she said, Location changed to Raja Market off 170, 1000 hours. Standby. She could hear muffled voices in the background, rapid, clipped operational tones. She couldn't make out the words, but she recognized the urgency. A decision was being made right now, in a room she wasn't in. 2 long minutes passed. Her grip on the phone tightened. The voice returned, firm and final. Accept the change, be there at 1000, no deviations. Then the line went dead. Maria closed the burner phone slowly, her thumb lingering on the hinge. She stared at it in her palm for a moment, feeling its weight as if it were a live explosive. The clock was ticking, and tomorrow morning, she would walk into whatever trap Yuri had built for her. Highway 170. Maria sat in her car in the hotel parking lot, engine idling, heater slowly pushing warm air into the frigid morning. Frost clung stubbornly to the corners of the windshield, melting in small rivers under the wiper blades. Her GPS, mounted on the dash, glowed with a steady blue line. 47 minutes to Raja Market. She had already decided she'd leave 2 hours early. She wanted time to check the route, time to scan the approaches, time to catch anything that felt wrong before it was too late. She gripped the steering wheel, the leather cold against her palms despite the heater. Her hands were trembling, small, involuntary shakes that no amount of deep breathing seemed to settle. Fear had a taste this morning. Metallic, bitter, like she'd been sucking on copper. It was in her blood, her muscles, her bones. She reminded herself of what Meyer had told her. The special operators would be there. The Finnish Jaeger sniper would be in position. Support teams would be covering the lot, the exits, the rooftops. But she also knew the truth. There was no such thing as guaranteed. In her world, the safest plan still bled. She could picture him now, Yuri, calm, polite, maybe even smiling when he saw her. His voice warm, his eyes calculating. A man who could kill without raising his voice. And she knew, without doubt, that if he saw even a shadow of betrayal on her face, he wouldn't hesitate. Her breath fogged faintly in the cold air of the cabin. She closed her eyes for a moment, pressing her head back against the headrest, and whispered to herself, "Keep your voice steady. Keep your hands still. Make him believe." The clock on the dash ticked over to 7:58. Time to move. She sent one text. Moving. She shifted into drive, the tires crunching over frozen gravel as she pulled out of the lot, heading toward the meeting that could end with Yuri dead. Or with her not coming back at all. Inside the operations center, Maria just texted, "She's en route to the contact point," Meyer said, stepping into the heart of the operations room. His voice was calm, but every person in the space knew the weight behind those words. "Excellent," the operation lead replied without looking up from the central display. His eyes swept the room, his tone sharp and deliberate. "Do we have eyes in the sky yet?" "Yes, sir," came the immediate response from the UAV pilot. The young man sat at a bank of 3 high-resolution monitors, headset snug over his ears, hands resting lightly on the controls. His posture was steady, but the glow from the screens reflected the tension in his eyes. "Eyes are up," he confirmed, fingers tapping a command sequence. On the main feed, a live video stream flickered into clarity-frozen asphalt roads, winding through sparse Finnish countryside, the occasional car breaking the monotony of snow-dusted forest. A small icon tracked a single moving vehicle. Target asset is in visual, following from 5,000 feet. Thermal and optical feeds are stable, no other tail signatures detected at this time. The low hum of electronics and the soft clicking of keyboards filled the room. Analysts leaned forward at their workstations, marking real-time GPS updates, reviewing overhead imagery for any sign of hostile surveillance. Communications officers relayed encrypted position reports to the Finnish Jaeger team, already staged near Raja Market. Meyer moved closer to the UAV pilot station, his hands clasped behind his back. On one of the side screens, Maria's car appeared from a top-down angle, heat signature glowing against the cold tarmac. "Maintain shadow tracking," the operation lead ordered. "No overflight directly above her until she's within the outer cordon. Keep her clean." "Yes, sir," the pilot replied, making a subtle joystick adjustment. The room settled into its rhythm-controlled, precise and tense. The operation lead straightened from the console, his voice cutting through the hum of chatter and electronics. "Is the sniper in place?" From the far side of the room, an analyst monitoring the Raja Market feed swiveled in his chair and raised his voice. "Yes, sir. Overwatch is confirmed northeast rooftop across Highway 170. Perfect elevation, full concealment. Straight line of sight to the target zone." The operation lead stepped toward the central map table, leaning over the laminated satellite imagery. His finger traced the approach route from the highway to the open-air market. "Perfect," he said with a tight smile. The kind born not from relief but from knowing one piece of the plan was exactly where it needed to be. He didn't look up as he asked the next question. "What about Ute Jaeger and Special Operators Transport?" The tactical controller 2 stations over answered without hesitation, eyes fixed on his real-time tracking display. "They're staged and on standby at grid location 35VNH42095-2293. That's 1.6 clicks from the contact point. Once Yuri is confirmed on site, both teams will lift in the NH-90s and be on the ground in 2 minutes 1:40 if we push it." "Good," the operation lead said, finally glancing up at the wall of screens. UAV feed, market perimeter cameras, traffic cams from the highway, a 3D map of the surrounding district marked with color-coded assets. The sniper's firing lane appeared in a green overlay on one monitor. The Ute Jaeger intercept path was plotted in red. The special operator's containment pattern blinked in blue, waiting for the execution order. All that was missing now was Yuri Ivanovich Nosenko stepping into view. When he did, the whole board would light up. Raja Market. Maria eased her car off Highway 170 and into the Raja Market parking lot, her tires crunching over patches of frozen grit. The wide expanse of asphalt stretched out before her, mostly empty this early in the morning, except for a scattering of cars dusted with snow. She slowed, scanning the lot, her eyes flitting from the store entrance to the perimeter road, to the shadowed edges where the snowdrifts met the tree line. Every instinct told her she was being watched, even if she couldn't see it. There had been no contact since she left the hotel, no coded updates, no reassurance from the ops center, just the hum of the road and the sound of her own breathing. Then, from the cup holder, the burner phone vibrated. The tiny screen lit up with a new message, the sender listed as unknown. "Park in the northeastern parking spot." Next to the grass embankment, Maria's pulse jumped. She lifted her gaze, scanning across the lot until she found it an isolated row near the far northeast corner, bordered by a low grass embankment still glazed in frost. No other vehicles were parked there. Too perfect, too exposed. She swallowed hard and started forward, steering slowly toward the designated spot. As she crossed the lot, her eyes moved, constantly checking the mirrors, glancing between rows, sweeping for any sign of movement. No Yuri. No familiar shape leaning against a car. No figure emerging from between vehicles. The place felt almost too still. She nosed the car into the space, the grass embankment rising just beyond her hood, and shifted into park. Her hand lingered on the gear lever, unwilling to let go just yet. If he was here, he was close. If he wasn't, then this was just the first move in something she couldn't see yet. Valimanjoki River, Finnish-Russian border. Maria glanced down at her watch. 47 minutes until Yuri was supposed to arrive. She leaned back against the headrest, closing her eyes, trying to slow the pounding in her chest. Her breaths came in measured draws, inhale through the nose, exhale through the mouth, counting each one in an attempt to anchor herself. The smell of the car's heater and faint trace of her perfume mixed in the still air, but it did little to soothe her. The minutes crawled. She could feel each tick of the second hand in her bones. Out here, alone in her car, the silence felt heavy, pressing in against the windows. Every sound outside, a distant car door slamming, the faint hum of tires on the highway became magnified, each one a possible signal that the moment was approaching. To her mind, time was barely moving at all. Yet when she opened her eyes and checked her watch again, 20 minutes had passed without her realizing it. She rubbed her palms against her thighs, the static of her wool coat whispering in the confined space. She forced herself to scan the lot again, entrances, exits, every parked car, but saw nothing out of place. The next glance at her watch told her there were only 8 minutes left. Her stomach tightened, the edges of her focus sharpened to a point. Then, a sharp rap on the driver's side glass. She jolted violently, her breath catching in her throat, adrenaline flooding her system like a surge of electricity. Her head snapped toward the sound. Yuri was standing just outside her window. "Command, this is Overwatch." The sniper's voice came low and even over the encrypted channel, the background wind a faint hiss in the transmission. "Go ahead," came the reply from the comms desk. "I have eyes on Yuri exiting his vehicle," the sniper reported. "Target is moving on foot, approaching the asset's position. Range, 175 meters. Clear line of sight." "Roger," the comms officer acknowledged, tone clipped. Inside the operations center, the words landed like a starter's pistol. The operations lead immediately snapped his fingers in rapid succession, pointing toward different stations as he barked orders. "All right, people, operation is now active. Eyes up, every feed, every channel. Get those choppers moving now. Analysts leaned into their screens, tracking Yuri's movement from both aerial UAV footage and ground-level surveillance cams. Markers on the digital map updated in real time, the red icon labeled HVT-1, now moving steadily toward the blue icon labeled Asset. The tactical controller snatched up his headset mic. Eagle Flight, this is Control all teams, you are green. Lift now, repeat, lift now, target is on sight. The reply was instantaneous, the deep thrum of rotor blades already audible over the comms. Within seconds, 4 NH-90 tactical helicopters were airborne, lifting from their concealed staging area. Snow and grit spiraled in their wake as they swung into formation, heading low and fast toward the Raja market. ETA to target 2 minutes, the flight lead reported. In the ops center, the tension crystallized into focused silence. Every second, every pixel of movement on the screen mattered now. Yuri was on site, Maria was in play, and there was no turning back. The handoff. Yuri stood just outside the driver's side door, his posture relaxed, but his presence radiating quiet control. The winter light caught in his pale blue eyes that didn't blink, didn't waver, as they locked onto hers through the glass. Maria felt the weight of that gaze pressing down on her chest. Slowly, deliberately, she reached for the handle and pushed the door open. The cold air rushed in, carrying the faint scent of frost and exhaust. She stepped out, squaring herself in front of him. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The parking lot seemed to narrow around them, the space between predator and prey shrinking to just a few feet. I cannot believe you put me in this position, Maria said, her voice laced with a tremor that could have been anger or fear. Yuri tilted his head slightly, studying her expression. Maria, he said, his tone low but edged with something harder. It's not personal. The conviction in his voice wasn't meant to comfort. It was meant to remind her that she was just another piece on his board. He took a half step closer. Do you have the information? Maria swallowed, letting her breath hitch just enough for the effect. Yes, she said. She blinked rapidly, her eyes welling not from grief, but from the controlled release of tears she had practiced in mirrors and interrogation rooms. Fake tears slid down her cheeks, glistening in the cold light. To Yuri, they would look like resignation. To Maria, they were the perfect camouflage. Maria reached into her bag, pulling out 2 thick manila envelopes. She held them out, her hands steady despite the adrenaline flooding her system. The information you asked for, she said, her voice soft but audible over the distant hum of traffic. I could only get 12 months' worth. Yuri took the envelopes, his eyes flicking down briefly as he weighed them in his hands. For a heartbeat, the tension seemed to plateau, 2 operatives locked in the cold transaction of betrayal. Then something shifted, his posture straightened, his expression hardening into a mask of suspicion. His gaze snapped back to her face and Maria saw the change, the calculation in his eyes turning to fury. You set me up, he said, the words low, almost guttural. Before Maria could respond, his head jerked to the right, instincts pulling his attention skyward. Over the treetops, the distinctive thumping of rotor blades swelled rapidly, deep and rhythmic, like the pounding of a war drum. 4 NH-90 tactical helicopters burst into view, cresting above the forest in tight formation, moving fast and low. Yuri moved instantly. In one fluid motion, he dropped the envelopes, his hand going to the holster under his coat. The black grip of his sidearm cleared leather, the barrel swinging upward toward Maria's head. He never got the shot. A single crack split the air. The sniper's round punched through his right shoulder, spinning him backward with a force that tore the pistol from his grip and sent him sprawling to the pavement. The envelopes scattered in the wind, pages spilling like leaves. Maria's training kicked in. She turned and bolted toward the nearest cover, a concrete barrier at the edge of the lot dropping low, as the thump of the helicopters grew deafening. On the ground, Yuri gritted his teeth, the pain radiating from his shoulder like fire. He rolled, dragging himself toward the shadow of a parked delivery van, using it for partial cover. The NH-90s roared closer, their downdraft kicking up grit and loose paper. Shadows swept across the lot as the birds banked into position. Yuri lunged for his car, ignoring the blood soaking through his coat. He had seconds, maybe less, before the operators hit the ground. Yuri pushed himself up from the asphalt, teeth clenched against the pain searing through his shoulder. He didn't look toward the helicopters. He didn't have to. The roar above told him they were already almost on top of him. He broke into a sprint, boots hammering the frozen pavement, weaving low toward his vehicle. The sniper's second shot cracked through the air, splintering a chunk of pavement inches from his path. Yuri yanked the driver's side door open, half falling into the seat. His blood-slick fingers twisted the ignition, the engine growling to life. Without hesitation, he slammed the gear shift into drive, tires squealing as he shot forward. Overhead, two NH-90 gunners tracked him from their open side doors. Muzzle flashes lit the underbellies of the helicopters as controlled bursts of 7.62mm tore into the rear of his car. The rounds chewed through the trunk panel and punched into the taillights. One burst shattering the rearview mirror in an explosion of glass. Yuri jerked the wheel hard, his eyes never leaving the narrow exit of the lot. He swung the car onto the main access road, the engine straining under his sudden acceleration. Seconds later, he reached the intersection with Highway 170 and threw the wheel right, tires screeching as he merged eastbound. The road ahead stretched into a corridor of snow-dusted forest, the pale morning light flickering between bare branches. His breathing was ragged, his injured arm pressed tight against his side. But his mind was already running the next steps. He had one advantage, the geography. Eastbound on 170 would eventually take him toward the Russian border. He knew the crossing there was thinly manned, a sleepy post used mostly by truckers and locals. Far less security than coming into Finland. If he could reach it before the Finns and their American friends boxed him in, he might just make it home. And if he made it home, the hunt would be over. Inside the operations center, the operations lead strode quickly across the operations center floor, his boots echoing against the tile. His eyes locked on the glowing bank of tactical UAV control monitors. "Listen up, everybody," he said sharply, his voice cutting through the layered hum of chatter and comms traffic. "Target is on the run. Controller, are you locked on his vehicle?" "Yes, sir," the UAV operator replied, fingers moving with practiced precision across the console. His headset crackled faintly as live telemetry scrolled down one screen, and the real-time video feed filled another. "Excellent," the operations lead said, leaning in to watch. "Stay tight on his movement, don't lose him in the tree line." Turning, he pointed toward Mayer. "Mayer, I need you to call the border crossing. Tell them the target is moving east and will be at their location in less than 2 minutes. I want that post shut down." "I'm calling now," Mayer replied, already lifting the secure handset. He moved toward an isolated comm station, flipping through his mental playbook for the right code phrase to trigger a hard closure. The UAV's overhead feed stabilized on Yuri's vehicle, its dark frame cutting through the pale strip of Highway 170, snow-dusted forest flashing past on either side. "Altitude holding at 2,500 feet, the controller reported. "We've got the whole chase in view. 4 NH-90s are maintaining visual contact and closing distance." On the main display, the helicopters were specks moving in a disciplined diamond formation, their shadow flickering across the trees as they tracked the fleeing car. The feed zoomed in just enough to catch sunlight glinting off the shattered rear glass of Yuri's vehicle. In the room, every eye was on the screens. Every movement of that car dictated the next moves of multiple teams, spread across 2 nations. The operations lead folded his arms, gaze fixed on the map overlay. The operations lead pivoted sharply toward Mayer, his voice tight and urgent. "Did you get in contact with border security?" Mayer had one hand clamped over the radio handset, the other gripping the edge of the console. His face was drawn tight with frustration. "No one is answering the fucking radio," he snapped, raising his voice over the din of comms chatter. A murmur of tension rippled through the room. The lead's jaw flexed, his eyes snapping back to the UAV feed. On the central screen, Yuri's vehicle was a dark blur cutting across the snow-flecked highway. Seconds later, it appeared in the wide-angle view of the border, crossing a small, unassuming checkpoint nestled between 2 skeletal watchtowers. No visible movement, no vehicles queued, no sign of armed guards. "Where the hell are they?" one of the analysts muttered under her breath. The lead leaned forward, his palms flat on the console. They all watched as Yuri's car slowed slightly, rolled past the deserted booth without a single brake light flashing, and accelerated again, disappearing into the trees on the Russian side. "Shit," Mayer said, slamming the radio handset down. No alarms, no gunfire, no interception. Just like that, the HVT was gone across the border and out of their jurisdiction. The operations lead's eyes stayed on the empty crossing for a long moment before he straightened and exhaled slowly. Valimanjoki River Crossing. As Yuri's car rolled past the crossing, the icy border post shrinking in his rearview mirror, he glanced down at his shoulder. As Yuri's car rolled past the unmanned crossing, the icy border post shrinking in his rearview mirror, he glanced down at his shoulder. Blood was pouring from the exit wound, soaking his coat, dripping onto the seat and center console. Each heartbeat sent a hot pulse of crimson down his arm. The pain was sharp, but the dizziness creeping into the edge of his vision was worse. The wheel jerked suddenly in his weakening grip, pulling hard to the right. He cursed, trying to correct, but the tires skidded on the icy shoulder. Crack! A single, precise shot tore through the air. His front left tire exploded, the car lurching violently. Yuri fought to keep control, but momentum carried him over a small snow-covered embankment, the suspension groaning as the vehicle dropped into the open field beyond. The car bounced hard across frozen ruts, snow and dirt spraying up behind it. He kept his foot on the accelerator, pushing the battered vehicle another 400 feet before he realized the effort was futile. Through the smeared windshield, he spotted the glint of water ahead. The Valimanjoki River, a thin, icy ribbon cutting through the white landscape. The Russian bank was just a few hundred yards away. The low rhythmic whump 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 of rotor blades grew louder. They were close. Yuri didn't hesitate. He flung the door open and stumbled out, one hand clamped hard against his shoulder. The cold bit into his face as he broke into a run, boots punching into the snow, each step sending a hot spike of pain through his body. The helicopters were closing fast now, shadows sweeping across the field. One NH-90 swooped in low, its downdraft ripping at the snow, throwing it into Yuri's face in blinding sheets. The force knocked him off his feet, sending him sprawling onto his side. Gritting his teeth, he rolled and pushed himself up again. His vision swam, his legs felt leaden. Two helicopters touched down hard in the field behind of him, their rotors blasting icy wind that cut through his coat. Operators in dark gear began pouring out, weapons up, fanning into a wide arc. Snow crunched in steady, deliberate rhythm under the boots of the 10-man Uti Jaeger Regiment, an American Special Operations team, as they moved in a staggered combat line. Low, hunched silhouettes against the horizon, they advanced through the field near the riverbank. The Jaegers were Finland's elite direct action unit, trained to kill quietly and with absolute precision. In the cold, they looked like part of the landscape itself, their white and gray camouflage breaking their outlines against the frozen reeds and snow. The Americans mirrored their movements, rifles up, muzzles sweeping in practiced arcs. No wasted steps, no sound but the crunch of snow and the faint metallic clink of gears shifting with each stride. Ahead, Yuri was moving faster than a wounded man should. He cut through a brittle wheat field that bordered the Valimanjoki River, stalks snapping under his boots, his breath a ragged white plume in the cold air. His coat whipped behind him in the wind. He was too close to the river. He knew it, they knew it. In the overwatch scope of a Jaeger sniper positioned prone, his figure filled the crosshairs. The reticle tracked his head as he moved, swaying slightly with each lurching step. A faint glint of red light brushed the side of his temple, just for a heartbeat. Then, crack. The 7.62mm round struck like a hammer. It punched through the right side of Yuri's skull, exiting in a mist of crimson against the pale air. His body froze mid-stride, momentum carrying him one more step before he crumpled forward, lifeless. The current of the half-frozen river swallowed him almost immediately. His body bobbed once, twice, then drifted downstream, turning slowly toward the Russian side. The Jaegers moved in, fanning out at the water's edge. They stood still, rifles lowered but ready, eyes tracking the floating corpse until the current pulled it into the darkness beyond their jurisdiction. No celebration, no words. Target neutralized, came the quiet report over the comms. The mission was over. The Jaegers and Americans exfiltrated back to their operation staging area, leaving only the whisper of the river and the trail of disturbed snow to mark the place where Yuri Ivanovich Nosenko had fallen. Helsinki, 3 days later. Maria stood alone inside the hangar at Kimi Airfield, the morning light spilling in through the high windows in pale, dusty beams. The air smelled faintly of jet fuel and cold metal. On a folding table before her lay a neat stack of documents: passport, driver's license, birth certificate. All of them bore a name that wasn't hers. The address was a place she'd never been. The face in the photograph was hers, but the identity was something else entirely. Her old life had been wiped away in black ink and database purges. Outside, the crunch of tires on cold snow echoed in the stillness. A black SUV rolled into view, stopping just short of the open hangar doors. The glass was tinted deep, but as she approached, the rear window hummed down slowly. "Good morning," said Director Wainwright, his voice calm, measured, but carrying the weight of someone who had signed off on life-or-death decisions for decades. "Good morning," Maria replied, her tone polite but flat. "It's done," he said simply. She gave no reaction, no sigh of relief, no smile, no visible acknowledgement of the man they had killed or the operation that had consumed her life. "You saved a lot of lives," Wainwright continued, his eyes on hers. And you paid a price for it. We appreciate your service. She finally looked up at him, her voice even. Thank you, sir. Where's my mother? She is safe. Relocated. She doesn't know the details, only that you're alive. That landed heavier than she expected. Alive. It wasn't the same as together. Maria stood, tucking the new passport into the inside pocket of her coat. The documents felt heavier than they should, like the weight of a locked door she could never reopen. I'm not going to hide forever, she said quietly, but with steel in her voice. Wainwright allowed a small grim smile. That's good. We may need you again. She didn't answer. Turning from the SUV, she walked the length of the hangar toward a side corridor, her footsteps echoing on the concrete floor. She didn't look back. The woman who had walked into Kotka as a DIA site inspector was gone. The one who left now carried a new name, a new life, and the knowledge that somewhere in the shadows her skills would be called on again. She was no longer Maria Angela Romano, DIA Special Security Officer. She was the asset.